every time you update your GPU driver. So assuming you guys are now running on the latest NVIDIA driver, simply then go ahead and right click on your desktop and you should now be seeing the NVIDIA control panel. Once inside of the NVIDIA control panel, we're going to start off with the left hand side. We're going to go from the top to the bottom, starting off with the adjust image settings with preview. With inside of here, what we're going to be doing is navigating to the middle option, selecting use the advanced 3D image settings and then press apply. Once you guys have selected that, navigate to the Manage 3D Settings tab on the left hand side, and this is going to be the most important tab within inside of this entire video. Make sure that you follow along with these options as closely as possible. Some of them might be a slight bit different depending on which graphics card you have and if the options are available to you, but do follow these as closely as possible. So to start off with image sharpening. If you have the image sharpening option available, you should definitely use this, as this will enhance the visuals on DirectX 9, 10, 11 and 12 games. Going into the settings options, turning this on, allowing sharpen to be set to around about 50% with an ignore film grain of 0.17. And if you guys have supporting graphics cards and have the options available to you, make sure that you do enable the option for GPU scaling, as this will enable a bunch of custom resolutions within inside of games which will scale natively to your monitor's native resolution. For example, if your monitor is a 1080p monitor, this will allow you to play games at a lower resolution than 1080p and properly upscale the game to your monitor's 1080p native resolution. This is especially good for some of you guys running on lower end graphics cards, or if you wish to get the best FPS possible in most games you play, you should always have this option enabled. Even if you don't wish to use it, you should always have this enabled if you can. Next up is going to be ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is going to be recommended to set to the performance option. Anisotropic filtering is going to be set to application controlled. Anti-aliasing FXAA, I'd recommend turning to the off position. Anti-aliasing gamma correction, turning this on. Anti-aliasing mode should be set to application controlled. Anti-aliasing transparency should be switched to off. CUDA GPUs should be set to all. And that now brings us down to DSR factors, which is dynamic super resolution. This allows you to play games and render them at a higher resolution than your native monitor supports, allowing you to play 1440p, 4K up to 8K on a 1080p monitor, or if you're running on a 4K monitor, you could upscale all the way up to around about 8K, or as far as your GPU will allow you to render. For most people, I wouldn't recommend using this option, especially assuming most people watching this video are looking for the best settings in terms of performance and visuals, and DSR is really just there for some of you who like to play single player games and want the best visual experience possible. If you are going to enable DSR factors, I'd recommend turning on 2 times and 4 times only, but for most of you watching this video, I wouldn't recommend using this and unchecking everything within inside of here, pressing OK, and that will switch it to off. If you guys do set up DSR factors, it's recommended you set your DSR smoothness to 0% or at most 10%. You can play around with that, it's personal preference, but I'd recommend turning that all the way to 0. That now brings us down to low latency mode, which is one of the most important options within inside of here. For low latency mode, if you guys are capable of getting over about 80 FPS in most games, I'd recommend switching this to the on position, as this will drastically help you decrease input lag within inside of the game, allowing the game to feel a lot more snappier and responsive, and can also help out boost your FPS. Underneath low latency mode, that now brings us down to max frame rate. With inside of here, I recommend switching this to the off position unless you guys are wanting the smoothest experience possible. If you guys do want the smoothest experience possible, it's recommended switching this to the on position and setting this to match your monitor's refresh rate. If you guys are running on a 240Hz monitor, set this to 240. If you're running on a 144Hz monitor, set this to 144. Do bear in mind that games will not run past this FPS, and this FPS will be a hard cap at a driver level, allowing you guys for a lot faster frame times and more stable frame times, so you'll be left with a more stable game. But for most of you watching this video, I would recommend turning this off. Monitor technology. If G-Sync is available to you with inside of here, you can use it if you wish to do so. There is a brief explanation on the right hand side of the screen now, which will basically sum up how G-Sync works. For me, I'm running on a 240Hz monitor, so I don't wish to use G-Sync, and I'm going to be using fixed refresh. Navigating down to multi-frame sampled AA, I'm going to be switching this off for the best FPS possible. Navigating down to the OpenGL rendering GPU, switching this off of auto select and selecting the graphics card in which we have installed. Power management mode. Again, this is one of the most important options with inside of here for ensuring that you guys are getting the best FPS and the most stable FPS possible. Change this off of optimal power and switch it to prefer maximum performance. Under the preferred refresh rate option, I'd recommend switching this off of application controlled and selecting this to highest available. Shader cache should be switched to the on position. Texture filtering anisotropic sample optimizations should be switched to on. Texture filtering anisotropic sampling optimizations should be switched to the on position. Texture filtering negative LOD bias should be set to allow. Texture filtering quality should be switched off of quality and set to high performance. Texture filtering trilinear optimization should be switched to on. Threaded optimization should be set to auto. Triple buffering should be turned off. For vertical sync, we're going to be going inside of the 3D option and switching this to off. And last but not least, going down to the bottom to virtual reality pre-rendered frames and setting this to 1. And that concludes the best settings. Once you guys have got all of those options set up correctly, take yourself to the bottom right hand side and click the apply button. We can then take ourselves over to the left hand side once again to configure surround. With inside of here, go to the physics settings, go to processor, go to the drop down menu and select your graphics card once again. Make sure that you press apply after setting all of these changes. We can then navigate over to the change resolution tab, starting off by selecting our main monitor on the left hand side. You may have more than one monitor connected to your PC and you'll see them all listed here. We're going to start off by going over to our main monitor, selecting the highest resolution under the PC category available. For me that's going to be 1920 by 1080, and ensuring that you've got your refresh rate set up correctly by going to the drop down menu and selecting the highest refresh rate within inside of here. For me I have 240 Hz. You can then scroll all the way down to the bottom, come down and select the option for use NVIDIA color settings. Make sure this is set to full in the bottom right hand side and press apply. To the apply the following enhancements, go to the digital vibrance tab and I recommend